Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. All right, everyone, welcome to episode 63 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts, Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage. To
get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Toshiba shareholders vote out board chairman over governance scandal.
LDP eyes Tokyo Assembly election success as Governor Koike's commitment to leading opposition party under question.
Ex-banker arrested after sporting stolen girls' school uniform in school toilet.
This week in Japan. Okay, our first story. Toshiba shareholders vote out board chairman over governance scandal.
Kyoto News has reported that disgruntled Toshiba Corporation shareholders voted on June 25th to remove its board chairman and another director responsible for oversight, in a debilitating blow to the Japanese industrial conglomerate engulfed by a governance scandal.
The outcome at a general shareholders meeting adds a new twist to the turmoil at Toshiba after an independent probe found it had colluded with the government in pressuring foreign activist investors in the run-up to a general shareholders meeting last year.
The two directors voted out were board chairman Osamu Nagayama, who had defied calls from some investors to step down and instead vowed to rebuild the board, and another director, Nobuyuki Kobayashi, who was voted out for his role as a member of Toshiba's audit committee, which found no issue with how last year's general shareholders meeting was held.
The vote came after Toshiba CEO Satoshi Tsunakawa vowed to win back trust from shareholders and improve its corporate climate, 5 years after Toshiba's infamous accounting scandal.
Tsunakawa did not reveal a breakdown of the vote, saying only that the two failed to secure the support from a majority of shareholders. He himself was reappointed.
Toshiba is scrambling to repair its reputation after an investigation by independent lawyers found that the company, seen by the government as critical to national security, sought help from Japan's industry ministry to fend off overseas investors like Ifissimo Capital Management, PTE Ltd, ahead of an annual shareholders meeting in 2020.
The probe, which was commissioned by some of Toshiba's overseas investors, has exposed governance issues at Toshiba and raised questions about how much the government should be allowed to interfere with private companies under the name of protecting national security. Cough, Nissan, cough.
Fearing foreign activist investors would gain influence over the board last year, Toshiba attempted to take advantage of a Japanese law allowing the government to monitor overseas shareholders for national security reasons, according to the lawyer's investigation.
Toshiba is, of course, a Japanese household name with its business portfolio spanning nuclear power, defense equipment, and semiconductors.
So one really interesting thing to me is this law that gives them kind of this overriding ability to kind of monitor other investors from overseas. Do China and America have a similar system like this?
I think it's really difficult because there is, of course, a lot of question about the influence of overseas investors on companies in specific industries. In an earlier podcast, we talked about how SoftBank also came under a similar situation, as, of course, their telecommunications infrastructure is crucial to the Japanese economy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a good example, I think, in an American context might be like Apple, AT&T, and then in China, Huawei, which also, kind of breached this whole national security thing pretty deep, in that certain countries are very, very invested in these companies, and they're critical to the national security of the respective countries they belong to.
At the same time, though, I think this particular issue stands out because the directors at Toshiba were trying to use this law in order to limit the influence of these overseas investors.
And they called them foreign activist investors, right?
Yes, exactly. And this whole thing about activist investors in Japan has also become a much larger topic in recent years. As up until recently, you didn't really hear about activist investors in Japan.
This is my first time hearing about it.
This is a thing. I mean, you've got all of these super firebrand investors who will go to the shareholders meeting and submit very radical proposals. And this is a thing, of course, in the United States, in the UK, in Europe, and it's become quite normal for activist investors who sometimes suddenly take a very large stake in usually a blue chip company, which is very bureaucratic, maybe underperforming, maybe has governance issues, and basically they come in with lawyers and big proposals, and if the company decides against following these proposals, lawsuits and public relations campaigns often result.
Wow. Sounds like a bureaucratic mess.
Oh, and it just becomes this huge fight between the investors because, if you're a listed company, you have to show that you're working in the best interest of shareholders.
Right.
And if you have a big shareholder who says that they have a say, and especially if they can get a majority of the other shareholders together around the same idea, then the company is supposed to have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, depending on how that company's management is like and how they interact with shareholders normally, especially traditional and bureaucratic companies, will be less proactive in following the recommendations of these activist shareholders.
Wow.
And that's not to say that these activist shareholders are always the good guys. I mean, they might be trying to do something for a pump and dump sort of situation where they're trying to, get short-term benefits, which will have long-term consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And companies are also working to sort of curb some of the more outlandish demands of these activist investors.
Oh, I'm sure.
But this is a brand new thing in Japan that's really started to take prominence just in the past few years. And Japanese companies are not used to dealing with activist investors.
Mm-hmm.
But they're getting headlines and they're becoming more and more loud and activist-y now that it's become a thing.
Yeah. All right, and up next, LDP eyes Tokyo Assembly election success as Governor Koike's commitment to leading opposition party under question.
Kyoto News has also reported that with the June 25th start of campaigning for next month's Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly election, analysts are watching how a regional party founded by Tokyo's Governor Yuriko Koike fares against an alliance of the Liberal Democratic Party and the Komeito Party.
The analysts say they are not sure if Koike is fully committed to leading the Tokyoites' first party to victory in the July 4th election, suggesting she may be tempted to get closer to the LDP and Komeito as speculation swirls about her possible return to national politics.
The LDP and Komeito backed Koike's bid for re-election in the Tokyo gubernatorial race last year, and Koike has frequently met with LDP Secretary General Toshihiro Nikai, an influential power broker in Nagatacho.
Shin Sato, an associate professor of Japanese politics at Tokyo Metropolitan University, said that, quote, "It will be an election to predict how Governor Koike can pave the way for her return to national politics."
Governor Koike, who currently serves as a special advisor to Tokyoites First, has not clearly stated how far she will go in supporting the party, but the party will need her full backing if it has any chance of prevailing in the upcoming race.
Asked about her commitment to the party in the assembly re-election, Koike told reporters, "I created Tokyoites first." Then she added, quote, "We must fight against the coronavirus with an all-Tokyo approach."
While Tokyoites First is the largest force in the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly with 46 seats, the LDP and Komeito, the second and third largest parties, are joining hands again in a bid to win a majority in the 127-seat chamber.
Commenting on the last Tokyo election in 2017, Yu Uchiyama, also a professor of Japanese politics at the University of Tokyo, said, "Tokyoites First rode to victory on the popularity of Koike, but it has yet to establish a strong foothold in the region. It will face headwinds without her commitment."
In addition, this time around, Tokyoites First is no longer teamed up with Komeito, which cooperated with Tokyoites First in the previous election in 2017, which, together with Koike's popularity, dealt a significant blow to the LDP.
In the 2017 election, the LDP captured only 23 seats, down from 57 before the poll and far below its previous record low of 38 in 2009, when the LDP also lost its national majority to the Democratic Party of Japan.
2017 was not a good year for the LDP. You know, it was after Koike had risen to power, and, you know, that was the first blow for the LDP, who was thinking about having Governor Koike run as their candidate for governor, but because of her bad relationship with some people in the LDP's Tokyo chapter, she ended up going rogue, and she ended up running as an independent and winning. And then it didn't stop there. She decided to essentially create her own opposition party, Tokyoites First, and the LDP got massacred in 2017. I mean, even worse than they did in 2009, when, you know, we also saw the LDP lose to the DPJ, the Democratic Party, at that same timing. So that was terrible. And then after that, it was also speculated that the National Party that Koike supported would additionally come into power, and we had that Party of Hope, or Kibo no To.
Right.
And that was actually right after the Metropolitan Assembly election later in 2017 in October. But the tides turned and the LDP ended up prevailing, and the Party of Hope very quickly turned into the Party of No Hope, as pundits very hilariously pointed out. So originally, I think Governor Koike was looking to catapult back into the national spotlight with an opposition party, her own opposition party, but that did not work out. And as a shrewd politician, I would imagine Governor Koike has decided that trying to start a new national opposition party, which will end up having a similar conservative stance as the LDP does, as she is also a conservative, doesn't really make sense. So for a national political future, it does make sense for Governor Koike to cozy up to the LDP and their junior coalition partner Komeito, but where does that leave Tokyoites First, the party that she created for the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly?
So I guess the big question is she going to continue under this party or just make a new party completely?
Well, so this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So she started Tokyoites First, but traditionally governors don't have a political party. So she's a special advisor to Tokyoites First, but she's not the chairperson.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so she's not even on the sort of operating committee. She's just sort of like a figurehead, an advisor. But that doesn't mean that, you know, she's involved necessarily in the day-to-day operations, etc. Even though a lot of Tokyoites First Assembly members are former colleagues and associates of Governor Koike.
Interesting.
So, you know, Tokyoites First has a lot of members that are sort of considered to be children of Koike, whether they're former secretaries or colleagues or whatever. And basically, she really created this Tokyoites First party, and a lot of the people who are in the party because of Governor Koike.
So, question from someone who doesn't know so much about Japanese politics. Are people in this party people that have run for actual positions and won under the party?
Exactly. So they're currently they're serving out a term as members of the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly.
Ah, okay.
And so that's Tokyo's sort of prefectural government body. And so it's sort of funny. It's sort of like the Darth Vader situation where all of these Metropolitan Assembly members are basically people who rose to power on the coattails of Governor Koike, and she's sort of like their father.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Governor Koike is a maverick, and she also is very independent, and I think she also expects the people who she brought up into this position to sort of figure shit out for themselves. So I wouldn't be surprised if she took a step back from really waving the flag of Tokyoites first this time around, but that's a potentially nasty proposition because without her flag waving, a lot of those people who she put into the Metropolitan Assembly might not get reelected.
Right.
And so what is that going to mean for the future of this party, which, as she pointed out, she did create?
Yeah. Funny that's all she said. Quite vague.
No, I mean, it's, it's right now, I think earlier this week, Governor Koike was actually hospitalized with fatigue.
That's right.
And it's kind of hard to figure out, what's on her mind right now and where she is going to focus her efforts with this very divisive election coming up in less than a month. I mean, 25th to 4th, it is upon us.
Yeah. Well, she's quite popular here in Tokyo. I think especially among the foreign nationals that live here.
No, I think there are some people, especially fellow Twitter shit posters, who don't like Governor Koike, and for that matter, generally have a negative opinion of whoever is the governor of Tokyo. But my opinion on the matter is, love or hate her policies, I don't like them all myself. I think it's pretty hard to say that anybody in recent Japanese, Tokyo gubernatorial history has really tried as hard as she has to raise the profile of Tokyo. And I think it's important to look at her career as governor up until now as a very proactive tenure, which has a lot of good highlights.
All right, in our last story, ex-banker arrested after sporting stolen girl's school uniform in school toilet.
Nikkan Gendai has reported that a 55-year-old ex-banker in Wakayama City has been arrested for breaking into a public high school and stealing a girl's uniform.
It's always the bankers. At about 9:30 p.m. on June 15th, Tamio Ueda, an office worker, allegedly broke into a public high school in Wakayama City and stole a sailor-style school uniform for girls.
After stealing the girl's uniform, Ueda then put it on and remained on the school premises for several hours. Then, at around 2 in the morning, Ueda entered a school men's restroom where he was happened upon by another male trespasser.
The man eventually apprehended Ueda and called the police. Upon his arrest, Ueda admitted to allegations of theft and trespassing.
The second trespasser, who's this guy?
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah. So this second trespasser entered an open school gate in search of a place to rest after feeling ill as he was walking by outside.
I'm rolling my eyes.
A likely story.
I just had to rest in this all-girls school bathroom. I was really tired. When he rushed into the bathroom, he encountered Ueda, dressed in the girl's sailor suit.
Well, I mean, if we can go under the pretense that trespasser number 2 didn't have nefarious underlying pretenses for entering this school. Maybe he just was drunk and needed to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, being that guy? You're like, oh man, I really gotta take a leak, and then you're going to the bathroom, and there's this old man in the girls' school uniform.
All right, so I want to pose a theory already. In Japan, if you see some crazy ass in the bathroom, I think most Japanese people, if it's like a public bathroom, like in a shopping mall, most people probably would just like want to get the hell out of there. They wouldn't bother to call the police. I think this other trespasser, this was his turf. And he's like, what is this motherfucker doing in my turf?
That's my safe, you son of a bitch.
Exactly. Like, I really feel like going to the trouble to call the police on like just some crazy ass dude in a weird uniform. I mean, don't you see crazy shit all over Tokyo? Like,
You don't look good in that girl's uniform. Only I do. Maybe we do have to start calling it Waka Flocka.
Yeah, for real.
Wow.
So Ueda then made a run for it, dashing out of the restroom. The second man gave chase. By the time the man caught up with Ueda, he had changed out of the girl's uniform and back into his regular clothes? How did he change while he was running away, I guess?
Okay, so you get caught, in a girl's uniform, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to escape, you can't escape. You can't leave the school while you're still, dressed up like the schoolgirl.
Yeah.
And you're a 55-year-old man.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he thought, I'm going to get away, then I'm going to ditch these girl clothes, and I'm going to put on my old man clothes, and then I'm going to make my grand escape.
Yeah.
But after putting his old man clothes back on, apparently his Nikes stopped working or whatever. I don't know, man.
I feel like this would make such a good Japanese comedy skit. Like, maybe you know the name. There's a lot of like these comedians that do the situational comedy, especially 20 years ago.
Like Manzai?
Like kind of like Manzai style,
Yeah.
where the cops are interviewing like suspect number 1, who's turned into by suspect number 2, and then all of a sudden the cops are like, "Wait, how come How come you knew about this guy? How why were you there?" And then it turns out to be the same reason as the first guy or something, right?
A police investigator told Nikkan Gendai that, well, the man who made the call also trespassed, but we will handle that after hearing from the school.
The arrest is not the first for Ueda. In 2010, police accused him of breaking into the same school 5 times between 2005 and 2009, where he stole 11 items, including girls' gym clothes and yearbooks.
At the time of that arrest, Ueda was the deputy sales manager at a local bank.
The same investigator speculated that, well, maybe he enjoyed wearing them, like the sailor suit.
For the first offense, a court handed Ueda a 3-year prison term, which was suspended for 4 years, which means that if he didn't do anything bad for those 4 years, he didn't have to go to jail. I don't think he's going to be lucky this time around.
Yeah, geez, I just imagine lots of loose ends, working at the bank. Banks are tough.
Loose ends, loose socks, Waka Flocka. Gotta connect the dots.
Yeah.
You know what? I have to say, though, if anybody who's listening to this podcast wants to become a police investigator, Wakayama is definitely the place to do it because all the crazy weird shit apparently happens there.
Yeah. We aggregate news stories every week, and Waka Flocka seems to be the place where the weirdest shit's coming out of. So some female friends of mine that live here in Japan have told me that these kinds of incidents aren't so rare, especially at all girls schools. There's lots of unhinged older men that might break into the schools and not do anything harmful, but just really weird stuff, like this guy did.
Well, to give you an example, to sort of prove your point, Have you ever seen the pool that is usually attached to either a public or a private school around Tokyo? No, right?
No,
you know why? Because there's a big wall around all of them.
Yeah. Actually, I lived behind a not a school pool, but just a public swimming facility. But even that was like heavily guarded and had like 2 sets of walls to get in.
Oh yeah, they're like maximum security prisons because weird dudes with cameras will just roll up. And I mean, if they're trespassing on school property, then, you know, they can be arrested. But,
Yeah.
you know, if you're just taking a picture on, you know, on a road, on public property, I mean, you know, shoo them away. And if you think they actually took a picture of something they weren't supposed to, then you can arrest them. But, you know, usually it's, hey, I'm going to get you. And they just run away.
You know what? You're making me remember and realize the pool at the university that I was at here in Japan was also like maximum security.
That's why, man.
I went there once and I never went there again because I had to do so much BS just to get in the freaking pool and to finally swim. And then I think I had to get out because like a class came in. I'm like, screw this, man. I'm never coming back here. Yeah,
you got to get one of those Bill Gates implemented microchips in order to get to the pool.
For real.
Well, I got my vaccine. Can I use this? Well, we need to put another one in you. Can you roll up your sleeve?
And up next on Weird Thing of the Week, 140 police raid Kyoto University dormitory over suspected connection to far-left activists. You're now listening to Tokyo Wave. The Weird Thing of the Week.
Oh, hell no!
So recently, the Mainichi reported that riot police raided this Kyoto University dormitory in connection with the arrest of a 26-year-old man believed to be a far-left activist, which sparked fierce protests from Kyoto University students.
The search of the university's Kumano dorm in Kyoto's Sakyo ward was the first of its kind since November 2018.
So you think, oh, there hasn't been a raid since 2018. Oh, they lasted 3 years without a raid.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Japanese dorm getting raided by the police? Sounds pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
But for this dorm, I think 3 years is actually a pretty long time.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So, police suspect that the dorm has been used as a base for far-left revolutionary activists and that the man frequented it.
The man, believed to belong to far-left group All Japan Federation of Students Self-Governing Associations, known as Zen Gakuren, was arrested on June 21st for allegedly using a false address when renewing his driver's license at a police station in Kanagawa Prefecture on October 2020. He reportedly claimed there was no change to his home address in the prefecture when he was actually living in the city of Kyoto. He is said to have remained silent over the allegations.
Kind of feel like there's more to the story, you know?
Oh, for sure. I mean, just because of address.
140 police raided a dorm to arrest a guy because he misreported his address?
Something else is going on. Yeah.
You ever feel like you're on the tip of an iceberg? So when some 140 Kyoto Prefectural Police investigators and riot police officers arrived at the dorm at around 9 a.m. on June the 24th, students living there rallied against the raid, telling police, "Show us a search warrant," and "There should only be investigators here. Why are there so many riot cops?" To which police replied, "We're not going to argue here." And a struggle then ensued between the two sides, which continued in front of the dorm for about 10 minutes before several investigators entered the building and searched the site for about 90 minutes before leaving with confiscated items.
The dorm students continued protesting while police searched the building, chanting with a microphone and speaker, "Arrest and extended detention over petty crime is a human rights violation."
Yeah, these,
All over wrong address registration.
Yep.
Oh
So,
my God.
we both went to college in Japan.
Yeah.
I don't think we really encountered any of this kind of stuff, right?
Never even heard about stuff like this. I mean,
So I had heard about this because, this used to be a huge thing in like the 60s and 70s. There were a lot of riots and protests at universities. We'll get into that later. But yeah, over an incorrect address, 140 riot police. Something sounds weird.
So the conflict caused turbulent scenes in the area as an amplifier-equipped car drove around the dorm. The riot police squad remained outside the building and didn't enter the premises.
So these, college kids who live in a dorm have an amplifier-equipped car. They're referring to like a souped-up stereo system. Like, it's like megaphones.
Oh, yeah. The kinds that, politicians would use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So according to Kyoto police, officers also raided Tokyo-based publisher Zenshinsha, a hub for extreme left revolutionary activists, on the same morning. Police say they have confiscated some 40 items, including the publisher's newsletter Zenshin and notes.
Kyoto University has a long past with student protests. Left-wing extremist groups and all-campus joint struggle committees, or Zenkyoto, Japanese student organizations consisting of anti-government radicals.
Okay, I think we're starting to put the dots together here.
Yeah.
So these Zenkyoto were formed to organize students during the 1968 through 69 Japanese university protests. Unlike other student movement organizations, graduate students and young teachers were also allowed to participate. That's an easy way to lose your job. Active in the late 1960s, these Zenkyoto were the driving force behind clashes between Japanese students and the police.
Another interesting relic of this era is the Kumano dormitory itself, the one that was raided in the story. Established around the late 60s, Kumano Dorm is a student-run dormitory that has strong political ties. Exchange students will most likely only know about Kumano because of its underground club, located in the basement of the dormitory, that runs events weekly. The dorm also has an area with Zengakuden memorabilia, including helmets that were used in political clashes and a collection of left-wing books covering topics ranging from anarchism to Marxism.
So yeah, Kyoto University has, what's funny though, because it used to be, Hosei University, the university I also went to, International Christian University, and there were a lot of universities that had these extreme like left-wing groups and protests, and people were catching shit on fire and, rioting and destroying classrooms and whatnot, and it was mayhem.
Yeah.
But that really doesn't happen in Japanese universities anymore, except for at Kyoto University.
I wonder what was going on with the timing. They must have got some kind of tip that they might have been planning something. Maybe because the Olympics are coming up soon, some kind of protest.
Yeah, because these this sort of left-wing organized protest movement is also connected to the anti-nuclear demonstrations and maybe some anti-Olympic demonstrations as well. So there is a chance that the police were, saying they were doing one thing while actually doing another thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Sort of like how gangsters get arrested on like tax evasion charges instead of, putting cement shoes on people and dumping them in the East River.
Oh, man. There's a comedian that actually did a skit like that. He had the fake cement shoes and was coming out of the river where people actually do this.
Yeah.
And the construction workers were just looking at the guy like, holy shit.
That's like performance comedy?
Yeah. Eric Andre, if anyone's interested. But no, it's pretty wild. There's this underground kind of political getaway in
And
Kyoto.
they've got a club.
Yeah, underground club. Some probably wild parties go on there, I'm sure.
I don't know. What do you do when you want to do like Nampa in that club? Hey, girl, you like Marx?
Yeah, I can imagine. But this is contrary to a lot of foreigners' idea of Japan, in which they wouldn't really see this country as a place where these kinds of protests take place, but they did take place, and these groups still do exist. And I think especially with a lot of the things happening now politically and with the Olympics, these groups might be becoming more active or planning new things.
I'm starting to think maybe we could create like a promotional piece for exchange students who might be interested in doing a study abroad at Kyoto University. American college students, do you like Japan? Do you like learning about other cultures? Do you also like Marxism, protests, and the occasional riot?
Whoa, cool!
Come to Kyoto University, Kumano Dormitory, the home of lighting shit on fire and clashing with Japanese riot police.
Yeah, I thought like these kinds of protests and people standing up for rights and stuff was like in more open democratic countries like Brazil and US, but Japan, man, those guys know how to fucking do it. I was out in the streets fucking protesting and shit, man. It's a pretty cool open country.
Disclaimer, we are not responsible for any arrests or deportation related to protesting against the police.
But I think all in all, this is a very interesting and educational segment. I definitely didn't know a whole lot about protests and these kinds of extreme groups that still exist here.
Looking at, Japanese college culture, and I think a lot of people sort of just see the, drinking and the circles and kind of club activities, and Japanese college students are just kind of seen as doing all of the crazy things that they wanted to do but never could because they were too busy studying for the notoriously difficult college exams.
Right.
And so it's that, 4-year period for students to sort of, drink beer and hang out and go to nightclubs and kind of screw off, basically.
Oh, for sure.
Or, have organized protests against the riot police.
Yeah. I'd say probably 99% go for the first, and then the other,
Go to Kyoto University.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.